Morning. Nothing? Morning. Much better.
Wow.
Okay, since launching in March last year, The Late Late Show with James Corden has become a huge TV hit and digital sensation. Recently earned 4 Emmy nominations, more than any other daily late-night American show. It's spawned formats like Carpool, Karaoke and Drop the Mic, and it is rarely out of the headlines. Their Britney Carpool dropped
a few hours
this
ago.
morning and is already creating waves. We'll talk about that a bit later on. In the US, digital has become a really key battleground of the new late night talk shows and an essential tool in keeping your show at the top. So in this session we're going to be talking to the executive producer of The Late Late Show, Ben Winston, and CBS Director of Digital Content, Adam Abramson. And they're going to discuss how they've grown a huge global audience and why thinking digital first is so important for them. First of all, how are you?
Really good. Feel very happy to be here. I've been coming to this festival since I was like 18 and couldn't find 600 quid to be able to come, and have listened to many of the people speak in this audience, and seeing you coming in, having known I've come to your lectures and learned from you, I feel quite moved really, that the idea that this many people would be asked to get up at 10 o'clock in the morning and come and hear 2 idiots speak about a show where we're just silly every night. But I feel very excited to be here.
You must also be incredibly proud, like looking at that reel of what you've achieved in such a short space of time.
Yeah, it's been really good. I think that you know, there was a lot of pressure on us really. There was a lot of people who, when we went out to America, they were like, I don't quite understand why CBS, which is the #1 network in America, have given an unknown dude from England of all places, and a white guy, another white guy in late night, his own talk show. And I think there was a lot of confusion. There was huge headlines saying, you know, who is James Corden? And you go into that environment thinking, well, on the one hand, you want to be fiercely ambitious and try things and be brave in the TV that we're making. Also scared out your life because you've got 200 hours of content to make every year. And yet with so many people doubting it. So you just sort of we just had to go for it, in truth. We just had to think of every idea, dream big, go round to every publicist's front door and beg them to let their client on our show, because they were like, well, we don't know. For all we know, you might be like, you know, the Simon Cowells, the Piers Morgan, the sort of critical Englishman, and we're not sure about it. So we really had to persuade people that this was a show that they should get involved in, and luckily they have, and yeah, it's been beyond our wildest dreams how it's gone.
And presumably a bit of resistance as well, because they're kind of looking at you and going, you're about a third of the age of the guys who usually run these shows.
Yeah, I took over from Peter Lasali, who's 84. The guy's an absolute legend. He's like become my mentor. He was the EP and the showrunner for Johnny Carson, and then David Letterman and Craig Ferguson. You've got Lorne Michaels on the other side of it at NBC. And we were coming to CBS. You know, James is the youngest host in the history of late night. I'm the youngest showrunner in the history of late night. And I think a lot of people were going, who are these kids and how they're given the keys to the cupboard? And you know, luckily it's done okay. So I don't think that's so much of an issue anymore.
Yeah, and okay is quite a big understatement, isn't it?
Well, it's all right. Yeah, we're a fucking hit. Yeah. I mean, what do I mean?
Yeah, that's essentially what we want to hear.
Oh,
yeah.
Great. Yeah.
How important was digital to the approach from the outset? Did you realise that this was going to be?
Well, I'll explain what Adam's job is, because it was crucial, and then Adam should talk about that too. I mean, when we came to the network, CBS naturally has always skewed quite older. It is the #1 network in America, but it hasn't necessarily always gone after a market that we can. And we were very aware that when you're making a show that late at night, to put the amount of effort and energy into a show that fundamentally most people are asleep for was going to be difficult. James always says something which I always love. He says he thinks James Corden is the funniest, best looking, greatest guy in the world, and he is James Corden. But even he can't stay awake to see himself that late at night. So if the biggest James Corden fan can't stay awake, how can anyone else? So we were very aware that for us to succeed, we needed to make a show that essentially launched at midnight rather than was on TV at midnight. And for that to work, we needed to bring in a digital team. And CBS were fantastic, and they were aware that it wasn't necessarily the digital side or the CBS Interactive have done well. They were aware that it wasn't necessarily something they've excelled at in the past. And so they gave us a budget to go and find our own digital team. So Rob Crabb, who's my co-EP with me and is sensational, we set about trying to find someone like Adam Abramson, and we managed to get him. Adam can tell you his own story, but it was important from the start that we said, yes, we have to find creative producers, we have to find brilliant bookers, we have to find incredible writers, but we also fundamentally need to invest early in the digital side, because without it, we're going to be talking to dead air, no one's going to be listening, and that's how we found Adam.
Was that an easy sell, though, to CBS? So you say they hadn't done that much digital before, and to say we need a pot of money for this?
I think they wanted to invest. You know, they wanted to reinvent the way that they approach late night, and I think that, you know, and I think you can speak to this more because I wasn't hired yet, but I believe that the conversation quickly steered to, if you're going to do this, it has to be across all platforms, you know, all from top to bottom across the budget. So, you know, they had a very specific way of how they wanted to handle the internet and market the shows that way, and I think that they realized, you know, when they came into it, there was a long history of late night on CBS, and I think they surveyed it and realized there was an area of opportunity there, and they said, you know, they were confident in their way of producing the show, so they wanted to bring somebody independently. So I think it was just probably, a couple of conversations.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we found Adam. Adam was working at Fallon at the time. He hated it. He didn't. And we met, and what excited Adam, I think probably, and I can't speak for him, but was we were willing to go, the digital team has a seat at the table in a massive way. And that was the key. It was like in every creative meeting, in every production meeting, and in every edit, in the post-mortem, as we call it, after a show, it's like you are there, and together it is as important as the edit of the show is what our digital approach will be every night, because we want people waking up the next day going, right, what was on Corden last night, what do we need to watch? So, you know, I think that potentially was something that was different for you, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, so I was at Fallon for many years and in a similar role, and I worked for somebody whom I learned a lot from. And when this opportunity came up, because I worked with the other showrunner, Rob Crabb, I went to him and we had a two-part discussion. The first was where the opportunities were on the digital side, where I thought they were. And two was this idea that none of this works unless we're fully integrated into the show, which has been the longest running battle for digital at any field, from print to, you know, television media to movie studios, is being treated on this level playing field. And so we had that conversation. We in turn on the phone had a similar conversation, and they made good on their word. And I remember after the first show that the team had gathered to review what had happened in the show, and I walk in and I had emphatically said, this is the meeting I need to be at. And they were like, sure, yeah, like there's your seat. And that's when I really, you know, that's kind of set the tone, because it creates a culture. By them adopting us into the fold like everyone else, it has created a culture there that digital is a fundamental part of the show, and it's proven to be. So
I like the fact that you walked into the meeting ready to kick off as well. Like, guys, I need. No, there.
Yeah.
Americans,
as discussed, it's there.
Yeah.
Americans are so loud as well.
Really... That must be a nightmare. Guys, shh.
Come on, it's midnight.
How do you? There's so much stuff on YouTube. There's like 400 hours of content uploaded every minute. How do you cut through that noise? How do you find the Carpool Karaoke? How do you know that stuff is gonna reach people?
Well, you don't really, but the thing that we love about what we do, I guess with YouTube, is that there's no, everyone's equal. And that's what's really great for us. The great rises to the top. The good stuff, the good quality will rise to the top. And it's not about leading, it's not about what time you're scheduled, it's not about whether you had the basketball on that night compared to somebody else. It is about the next day and the 7 days that follow it, people finding your stuff. So I don't think there's a necessarily way to cut through other than be quite clever with it and quite good with it, and try and think out the box as much as you can. And sometimes they're the most simple ideas like Carpool, other times they're a little bit more risky, like a drop the mic sort of thing, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But ultimately, I don't think there's an out-and-out rule for it. I think as long as you've invested in the digital side, you've got a huge presence and a marketing place there on the digital side, then I think that's how you can speak to the new generation. Because otherwise, I don't quite know how the networks will carry on in the way that they are and being as powerful as they are. you know, the CBSs of this world and the NBCs, ABCs and Fox need to, of course, get on board with the way television is moving. And I think a show like ours for CBS has shown that they can do that. And it's crucially important. It isn't just about sitting around anymore and worrying about what time we're on. People talk to us a lot about, oh, you know, do you want the 11:30 slot? Is that you know?
Have you got an eye on it?
Have you got an eye on it? And you know, and oh, that must be exciting for you in the same way that, you know, back in the day there was the Conan and Jay Leno issues, and James and Rob are very clear on it. We think that you know, to a certain extent in our genre, I'm not talking about prime time or live events, but in our genre, that whole ratings thing to a certain extent is a thing of the past. It's not where we make money from, it's not where we judge ourselves, it's not what I look to every morning, and it's a new era we're working in, and it doesn't matter if you're on CBS or Netflix, it's the genre that we're looking towards now.
We were talking earlier about your first Carpool Karaoke with Mariah Carey. Just tell me a bit about how the idea emerged.
Yeah, well the idea came from brainstorms where we were like, no idea is a bad idea. You sit in a room and you go, right, we have a lot of hours to fill. And rather than, you know, with structuring a show like that, rather than going, what do you do this week or what do you do on this show, you sort of more think about parts. And you sort of go, well, I've got a lot of parts to fill because I've got 6 parts every night. And so then you sort of want returnable things. And one of the things that we always loved doing was in 2009, 10, 11, something like that, we did a sketch for Comic Relief, which was Smithy Saves Red Nose Day, where James, as Smithy, essentially rescues Comic Relief, and Justin Bieber was in that sketch, and Gordon Brown, and all the living Beatles, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr were in it. It was like a huge sketch, but the only thing that, it took us like 8 months to do. We sort of just did it in like our spare time. When somebody was available, we'd like build the set and shoot them. But the one thing that everybody took away from that was when George Michael and Smithy were singing in a car, and they were singing Wham hits. And it was the thing that everybody always talked to us about. So it stuck with us that was a very joyful thing. And then again with James, James and I do stuff together occasionally before the show. And one of them was when Corden met Barlow, which was a show we made for the BBC. And again, we drove around the country with Gary Barlow, and James, without telling Gary, had put all of his Take Hat's best hits in the car. And again, they were singing, and it was really joyful. So we moved out to America. Lots of people said, oh, I can't come into the studio, I can't come on the show, but, you know, I can give you an hour of time, you know, after a junket or before this or before that. So we wanted to think of stuff we could do in the field, as they call it, out on the streets. And so this idea was born that people would sing their hits, and the carpool lane was something that had struck you when you moved to LA, because you can go in the carpool lane, and the name came to us, which was good. And then sort of nobody would do it. We were like, we had this big idea, everybody would sing their greatest hits, which is why it works, because usually when you get musicians on your shows, they only want to do their new hit, and of course it's the one hit that none of us want to hear. And but you're not getting Britney Spears on the Late Late Show tonight, and she's going to sing "Hit Me Baby One More Time." Well, like, can you imagine telling a publicist that's what you wanted? Whereas with Carpool, it was like, well, we'll just put their greatest hits in there. And nobody, literally, think of any artist that you've ever heard of. Think of them now, and they said no to Carpool Karaoke. Genuinely, they did. And then about 2 weeks before the show launched, we literally bumped into Mariah Carey's publicist at some like drinks thing in LA, and James and I went hard, pitched to this thing, showed her the George Michael clip on the phone. And she was like, look, I'll take it to Mariah. And then the next day it was booked, and 3 days later we were shooting it. And Mariah didn't really know what was going on. Of course she didn't, because she hadn't seen it. I don't quite know what Mariah thought, because when James pressed play on the first track, she was like, oh, we're not going to sing. And he was like, no, it's called Carpool Karaoke, Mariah. That's sort of the idea. And we put it on our second show. And within a week it had about 14 million hits. And we were like, oh, wow, okay, we've got something here. And then Carpool as a thing, it grew. A stat I'm proud of is that the 3 most viewed clips in the history of late night television in America is Adele Carpool #1 with 130 million, then Bieber, then One Direction, and they're more watched than anything else that's ever come out of that genre of American television. So it's definitely struck a chord, because it creates intimacy in such a lovely way. There's no managers, there's no publicists, there's no makeup artists, it's just James, who's this great character, alone with these people, singing wonderful music. And so it's very, very joyful, and it's resonated with people, which thank God it has.
So you mentioned the huge number of hits these things are getting. What does success look like for a digital format? What is the metric you're most interested in, Adam?
I think it's twofold. I think internally, or I say externally, it's all about when we log on the next morning, we want to see what the number is, and we watch that very closely. So that view count is everything, and I think it does create this level playing field that we spoke about. And I think separately, and we'll look at some stuff later, but we want to keep people on the channel. We treat the channel on YouTube just the same way that we try to treat the show on CBS. And it's our own little world, and we want to keep people in that world. So for us, we watch very closely how long people watch, and especially both on channel as a whole and in video. So we get all those numbers, and we definitely make a lot of decisions based on that.
And what's your daily routine like? You're doing 200 hours of content on a daily basis. What does that day look like?
The day. Okay, should we go through the timetable? I don't want to bore everyone. It might be interesting. I don't know. I mean, lots of people in here have done daily shows before, but I usually. So I can literally go through hour by hour, because it's quite timetabled in truth.
Yeah, cool.
All right, we'll do it, and I apologise if it's boring. So I get in the car about 7:30, call my mother, because she's very upset that I've moved to Los Angeles, so I do that first.
And then on the hour, every hour, call her.
No, I'm Jewish, I'm not that Jewish. And so about 7:45 I call Sheila Rogers. She's one of our bookers. We managed to poach her from Letterman. She's a wonderful person, supervising producer on the show. She works out in New York, so she gets a 3-hour head start on the day. Chat with her, check how we're doing on bookings for the week, get into the office about 8:15, sit with Rob. We go through what the monologue's going to be, decide what's in the news that day, get a bit of a lead on it from the night before. That's until about 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, James comes in, he'll sit with the writers, they'll pitch him some ideas. We try, because we're not like the John Olivers or the Colberts who really focus on politics, instead we try and do something a bit more silly with it. So if Hillary's done an interview last night on Nightline, we'll replace the presenter with James, and we'll try and do like a sketch out of it. So we try and think more ambitiously. That'll take us to about 9:30. 9:30, Rob, I and James will meet, sometimes with Adam as well. We'll go through what's going to be in the show tonight, check he's happy, which usually he is, because he gets everything and goes, yeah, I'll do that, that sounds fun. 10 o'clock, go to the edit, check how our VTs for that night are looking till about 10:30. 10:30, gather everybody in for a production meeting, go through each part bit by bit, making sure everybody's happy. 11 o'clock, we go through part 2 on the scripts, make changes to anything for our big comedy swing, whatever it may be that night, whatever game we're playing or what sketch we're doing live in the studio, make sure that's done. That'll take us till about 12. 12, the monologue writers will come in, we'll sit with a pack of jokes, we'll tick the ones that we think are funny, we'll cross the ones that we don't think are. 12:30, we'll sit with the segment producers, each guest, because we have 3 guests. We've nabbed it from Graham Norton. They all come out at the same time, which we like. It reflects James's personality. It's inclusive. It's different to other shows. So we'll allocate a guest producer to each one of those. We'll sit together. They'll go through what their questions are. We'll make changes on that. We'll try and make it, where can we link? How do we link Kobe Bryant and Betty White? How can, what can we do with them that makes it more fun? That will take us to about 1 o'clock. Then we'll do a planning meeting for the future day. Go to about 2 o'clock, go down to the floor, we'll do a rehearsal. The crew will all sit in. If they laugh at the jokes, it stays. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. 3 o'clock, the guest who we're doing the sketch through will come in, they'll run through it. Is it getting boring yet? Might be, I apologise. Then we'll look at, then you just get on with all the other stuff that running a show is, the commercial partnerships, the sponsorship, the issues that you've got. About 4:30, go and say hello to all the guests. James will go and meet them. 5 o'clock we tape. 6:15 we finish taping. We're quite strict about that. We don't ever overrun. We're usually about 4 minutes heavy. Go to the edit, give notes, snip stuff out, check the cuts, plan tomorrow, come back to the edit, 8 o'clock, watch down, make sure the show's ready. We air now in 155 countries, and so it's got to be delivered by 9:30 that night, and that's when it starts, and then about 9:45 I go home.
It's a fairly packed day.
Fairly packed day. What I will say, what I will say is that it sounds hard, right? But it's actually an easier life than when I worked here, because our life in telly is 24/7 every day of the week. Like majority of you producing whatever, you're always working. Saturdays, Sundays, you're on emails. You're constantly thinking about your show and you're working on your show. And you know, I've been involved. I can see Richard Holloway there. I've been involved with X Factor on and off for a little bit. And so weekends are big. I have to be honest with you. It sounds like a really tough day, which it is. But Saturday and Sunday is like a 2-day holiday in California. No one bothers you, no one disturbs you. It's just the mentality of the people that work in America is like, you work your ass off in the week, Saturday and Sunday we don't want to know. They're on holiday, unions wouldn't let them pick up a phone anyway. It's like very different atmosphere, and so therefore, you know, my wife is happier with this schedule than she used to be before I moved to America and made this show.
And at what point do you come in, Adam, like after the show is taped, and decide what you're going to pull out and push digitally?
I think after the first week, we had decided that it was best that I was in the control room with Ben and some of the staff every night. And
the gallery.
The gallery, yeah. So that's been a huge transition, is learning all of their lingo. There's a lot of Brits on our staff, but it's been quite nice.
Yeah.
I would never said the word quite until I started working for Ben.
Yeah.
So there you go.
You are so welcome, mate.
So yeah, you know, I think the show, during the show, we're in constant communication. He'll ask, do you think that'll play? I'll ask him, do you think that's a priority? So we're constantly talking in the breaks of the show. And then when we leave, I sit with the commissioner, who I would call an exec. We sit, we review the show, we identify what will play best on YouTube, and then I usually will check it with he or Rob to say, like, how do we feel about starting a clip here versus here? How do we feel about titling this versus this? And so it's very collaborative from the start of the show until the end of the night, really. So we keep a very similar schedule across the board, too.
Yeah.
So.
And then I assume you're getting vast amounts of digital data. How do you then use that to kind of guide what you do going forward?
I think that's one of our biggest, I would say, weapons is the analytics that we get from the YouTube platform, and from top to bottom so every week we have folks on the network side, we have tremendous support from the network, especially on identifying what we're doing and how to translate it into like more and bigger and better. So we get every Monday, I have a call, it's probably my most important call every week, where I sit with the network and we review the last week online, how everything performed on YouTube. We break it down to about 8 pages of analytics every Monday that we review. I send all the highlights to these guys. And then once a month, it's about 30 to 40 pages of full deep dive analytics on our show and all shows across the board. And we see how we stack up. And I think it's largely, all that information largely tailors in how we evolve the show on the platform, but there's some valuable information for how the show is programmed on air as well. But
for sure, it's amazing for us because we get to see what's working instantly. So when I get in the morning, I will check our YouTube hits before I check our overnight ratings. I'll check that before we go to the overnights, because the overnights just tell us who managed to stay awake. And they don't tell us anything about the quality that we're making, whereas the YouTube hits will tell us which bit flew and which bit went. So we will find bits that we never thought were that funny, but we took a risk on them. And you get to 1 p.m. the next day and you're seeing that a bit you did on the show last night that was quite a throwaway comedy sketch is getting to 1, 1.5, 2, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And so, yeah, I'd look at next week and I'd go, right, that bit that we did called Hot Coffee, let's do it again next week. And it's a really interesting way of programming where the viewer can immediately feed back to you by what they're sharing. And we get a real, we don't get, no one high fives when we beat Seth Meyers at night. We don't, that's just not the way, and I don't think he high fives when he beats us every night. But I think what we do love is we love when we have a clip that is trending on Facebook, that is blowing up Twitter. I was up at 4 o'clock this morning, partly because I was jet lagged and feel like shit, but also because I knew Britney Carpool went out last night and I did not want to be awake for the digital numbers that were coming in. I wanted to watch them live and see where we were trending worldwide on that. And that's where what we can do now is really exciting, and that's why I'm so glad we've embraced this side of stuff.
And do you now have a different benchmark where you started off, you're like, great, it's got 1 million hits, and now you're like, oh, only got 8 million. That sucks.
No. we have about, how many clips have gone over 1 million? 100 and something?
As of this morning, 172.
So we've got 172
I think we
clips.
can bring up.
Yeah,
So we have a slide with
yeah.
some stats. Here we go. There they are.
Yeah, so
Go on, Adam, you take us
yeah,
through.
so all right, so since we premiered last March, and we've accumulated over 7 million subscribers. Now 1.7 billion views. I mean, like I said, we've been on there for 17 months. 172 views, videos with 1 million views, and then, tremendously, we have soon to be 33 videos with over 10 million views, and it's just staggering. And then it's all been just increasing beyond our wildest imagination since the beginning of this year. We've outpaced every other show by double in how we grow on YouTube. So it's just been overwhelming. There's really no other way to describe it. It's truly overwhelming.
I suppose the big question really is, with all of this success, online success, how does that make CBS money?
It's a good question. It's something that we've had to really look at, because the view would be, if you're on YouTube, then the only way that you can actually make money is by that advert that most people skip before it gets to it. And actually, the revenue share of that, I'm not sure about. So we want to do ambitious things. We need the show to be profitable. And so therefore we have, because of our YouTube numbers, been able to make deals that we otherwise fundamentally as a midnight show wouldn't have been able to. So where does that go into? And of course there's some details that I can't go into and others I can. As an example, Selena Gomez did a Carpool Karaoke a few months ago, let's say, and they drove through a McDonald's drive-through. People watched it, they wouldn't have really realized it. I don't think we made sure it was fundamentally incredibly subtle so that our viewers would not for a second think that this was a sponsored bit. James, I and Rob debated it for many hours. So they drive through, she takes a sip of Coke, she has some fries, she gets to be on Carpool Karaoke, and James, it's got 45 million hits, that bit. No one's ever gone, hold on a sec, was that integration? And it was incredibly profitable for the show, and also something we put into the negotiations. On every single cup, French fries and bag in McDonald's for 6 weeks across the whole of America, it said The Late Late Show with James Corden on every night on CBS.
That's my favourite bit about that. So McDonald's have gone, listen, we'll pay you a load of money. Would you mind if we gave you this advertising as well on that product? And you were like, yeah, okay.
But then it's sort of, so we think about it in that way. We think about it with integrations. We do a thing on the show called Take a Break, where James goes and does a job. So he works, a few weeks ago he worked at a kosher butcher's. Another week he went and was a dog groomer. And businesses are coming to us now and saying, hey, James, can he work as a air hostess on this airline? And I feel like there's integrations that we can do with that, and I think that's been quite profitable. I think the fact that we're in 155 countries, if we weren't doing the numbers that we were doing on YouTube, I'm not sure that the commissioners and execs from across the world would be wanting to buy the show. So I think that makes it very, very profitable. We have built the set with a Bud Light bar in it, and so that generates some income for us. We have done a few spin-offs, which has worked quite well for the show. But fundamentally, it all comes from good creativity, good ideas that luckily have YouTube to play on. And then off the back of that, we've been able to work out a different way of monetizing our show from what maybe CBS had done in the past. And that's been a really exciting challenge for me in a way. With a production company, I run Full Well 73 or co-run it. We're co-producing this with CBS Studios. And one of the most exciting things for me has been, well, now that we've got this power thanks to YouTube, how do we actually monetize it? And I think we're doing okay at that at the moment.
And do you have to be careful with who you partner with, because you've got a cool brand at the moment?
Yeah, we do.
And so you don't want to suddenly have presumably Corden like drilling for oil in the Antarctic.
I think you're absolutely right. And
Texaco go great.
No, you're 100% right. There are brands that we have turned down. McDonald's we thought about for a long time. Interestingly, we had driven through 3 McDonald's drive-thrus in Carpool in the past, just because the person wanted to go through a drive-thru. So when One Direction were in the car, they did a McDonald's drive-thru. Justin Bieber did a McDonald's drive-thru, and Jennifer Hudson, she sang her order in which actually is the best Carpool. Jennifer Hudson, it's a weird one, it's the best one. And they were not integrations in any way. They were just because James was hungry, or One Direction wanted a snack, and so without meaning it, the brand was in there, and it was so therefore we sort of thought, well, it's quite natural. We've done it 3 times. We've only actually done about 15 carpools, and we've done 220 shows. There's only 15 of them that have had carpool karaoke in them, and yet 3 of them had this McDonald's thing. So we thought, well, it does fit actually, because we've done it 3 times before. In a quarter of the carpools, we've actually already done this sponsorship without even realising it. And they've been really great partners, them and Coca-Cola, and it's worked very well for the show. So you have to be careful. We've got a really cool brand. Corden is on the front of Rolling Stone magazine this month. I'm totally aware of the fact that we've created something really special, and we're getting that generation who are coming to us and are looking for cool, exciting, creative content. And of course, that's the most precious thing, and we can't sell out.
How do you, when you know that you've got something that is working like that, how do you maximise it?
I mean, they gave me the keys to like a Ferrari, and it was unbelievable. So I think if you go back to the beginning, show 2, we get Mariah. We had to learn on the fly, so it's a matter of collaboration and diving into the numbers that we talked about. And the idea is, how do you take this and keep people, like I was saying before, on the channel? That's just, that's our bread and butter, is to keep people there and watching and consuming ads and consuming James and just becoming more familiar with him. So, like I said earlier, audience retention is a big part of that. So I think, we work, like I said, we have meetings every week. I wanted to show, so this is a very important slide in that there's a couple of things that I want to speak to on this. And the first is that James is in it. The ability for us to go to Ben and James and say, we need 5 extra minutes when you guys are doing this big 2-hour shoot that's, involves 100 people. Digital needs 5 minutes at the end for him to record a couple of things. And these are devices to keep people in the universe to click to the next video. So what you see on the top left is the ability for people to jump in and see all of our carpools and handpick which one they want to see next. And then James would then point to his own face and say, if you click here, you can see all of our new videos as they come out instantly. So all this is, these are devices that we get in here, and none of this is possible. If it's static, it's just not going to be as effective. So to have James in there speaking directly to the audience and saying, I hope you enjoyed that. We have plenty more for you to see. And it's worked. If you look at this next slide, these are the baselines. So this is our most important metric internally, is how long people are on the channel for. So if you start at the beginning, we premiered on March 23rd. The peaks are most of them are carpools, and some of these other larger bits like Drop the Mic. So we kind of don't pay attention to those as much, because of course we're going to have higher audience retention on those. They're going to sit down for a 10-minute clip. But if you look at the red lines, you'll see that over the course of a year and a half, using some of those, basically free mechanisms to keep people on your channel and watching your show, you'll see that we've doubled how long people stay on the channel in general across the board. So those are our averages. We've gone from about 2 minutes to over 4 minutes of people just sitting on our channel watching our content, which we're tremendously proud of. We want to keep that number going. And it's through getting these guys involved and making it known to the audience on YouTube that this is more than a television show. This is a show that lives, like Ben said at the very top, this show lives 24 hours a day, and they're invested in it. And it's things that make us stand apart from the other shows, I think. It's just those little tiny things.
What's funny about Drop the Mic, if we just specifically, because I love that bit. Drop the Mic, actually, a guy called Jensen Karp came to see me, not as the EP of the Late Late Show, in truth. He came to me and said, look, I've got this idea for a show. I think celebrities could rap battle against each other. And the sort of, my Full Well 73 side comes in, and you go, well, that is an interesting show. And if I was to take that show out tomorrow, I might get a commission. But most people would go, well, could we see a taster tape? And they'd be right to say that. And they'd say, well, are you actually going to get celebrities slagging each other off and being prepared to be slagged off? And the joy that I have is I can go, well, let's try it on the show this week. So Jensen was sat there, we talked about it. We looked at I've got a sort of board in my office with sort of all the guests for the next month. Anne Hathaway happened to be on 2 days later. I was like, let's pitch it to Anne Hathaway. Let's see if she'll do it. My wife came up with the name Drop the Mic, great name for it. And we pitched it to her. Anne Hathaway likes James, she's a fan of the show. And she was like, yeah, I'll do it. And so we did it that night. The next morning, it was I've never felt more, as we were doing something on the studio floor that night, I was like, we've got a hit here. I was like, this is a really good one. I was loving it. I was just buzzing. And then David Schwimmer watched the show go out that night, and God's honest truth, he called the show. He called his segment producer, and he was on 2 days later, and he said, I've just seen Drop the Mic. I've written a rap battle that I want. I've written some lyrics. He's like, I'm going to take Corden down. And then
I love the fact he's already written it.
He'd written it.
Yeah.
And he sent it to us. He emailed it, and I looked at it. I was like, it's quite harsh. And I showed it. I remember walking to the floor because we were rehearsing for the next day show. I went, hey, Cordo, David Schwimmer, bizarrely, has written a rap that he wants to do it. And I remember seeing James go, oh my God, that is amazing that he watches the show and he loves it and he wants to do Drop the Mic and let me. And as he sort of read it, sort of was like, I just remember his heart sinking, the Schwimmer felt this. I was like, no, it's a bit. And then it's sort of, we've done it, Cara Delevingne's done it, Kevin Hart's done it, Rebel Wilson's done it. And then we put a taster tape together with those bits. And then we had each one of them having 10 to 15 million hits a time. And then it had a lot of buzz. And then it was a much better conversation to walk into TBS and Turner, where we've now just sold that show, and go, hey, this bit that you've seen on the show, that we've shown that people can rap and we can teach people to rap quickly and we can write these lyrics, and that is 15 to 20 minutes of rehearsal, because everything has to move quickly because you've got a show in an hour. The show doesn't start because you're ready. The show starts because it's 5 o'clock. And TBS bought it, and it was it was because of the investment that we'd made in digital that meant that we could come to a network or a broadcast or a cable network, whatever you want to call them, and go, look, here's a show that I can prove to you works. Don't worry about my barb overnights. Don't worry about our ratings. Everyone's talking about it. Here's some headlines about it. This is an example where we can book guests because of it. This is proof that we can make it, and we sold the show in 20 minutes. And it's going to be on. We've got 16 episode commission, 16 episodes, and thank you. And that will be on TBS in May, June, July, some point next summer. We don't know when yet. It's exciting.
Yeah, you hear from commissioners quite a lot. Bring us a taster tape, and I guess the ultimate taster tape.
Yeah.
You go, and it's had 15 million views.
Yeah. I'm very.
Powerful.
Yeah, it is not lost on me how lucky we are that every night we have an hour of television to fill, and we can fill that with ambitious different ideas. And do you know what? If we throw it at the wall and it doesn't work, who gives a shit? No one will watch it tomorrow, and that'll be fine. We can get away with it. But it means we can take risks. It's all very well me sitting there and going, oh, be creative and take risks and all of that, which you hear in a lot of these things. It's not that easy when you've got commercial sponsors and you've got commissions, you've got networks and stuff. But we do have a network in CBS that have backed us. We did 4 test shows. They gave us notes after every one, and since our premiere, I've not had a single note from the network, not one note. And they've just gone, we love it. It's great. We're proud of this show, and good luck to you. And anything you need, we're over here. They've been the greatest network. But I should just say, fundamentally as well, that at its core, the reason, it isn't because I'm an EP of the show. It isn't because of Adam. It isn't because of YouTube or CBS. Fundamentally, we have one of the most incredible talents of all time in James. And this is a guy who gets some stick sometimes in the UK maybe, but he's a guy who's a Tony Award winner. He's been in 2 plays on Broadway, History Boys and One Man, Two Governors, smash hits. He's written 2 sitcoms, Gavin and Stacey, and The Wrong Man's BAFTA nominated. He hosts a quiz show, League of Their Own, unbelievable success. He's been in movies where he's the lead, Into the Woods, breakout hit of last year. And now he goes on TV every night, just turns up at 9:30 in the morning and goes, what have you got for me? Let's make today fun. And fundamentally, we can talk about producing and writing and budgets and YouTube. Fundamentally, at its core, we have an incredibly talented, generous, brilliant figurehead in Corden, who is the reason why I've got the honour of sitting here today and doing this talk.
And you're absolutely right, clearly. But going back to the first show, you needed to sort of establish that. You needed to explain to America that you had this amazing guy.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
Well, we came out of the traps running. Our premiere episode, that 1 hour of TV, was the most significant hour of any of our professional lives. We planned for it tactically like Jose Mourinho would plan for a cup final. Everything from the lighting cues, the music that we got ready to play. James come out at the beginning, didn't try and be funny. He didn't try and go, hey, I'm a really funny guy. He came out and he said, I know a lot of you are thinking, what am I doing here? I'm thinking that too. And it was a really lovely thing to say. He thanked his parents, which is quite schmaltzy, but Americans love it. And no, but he meant it. And then straight away he said, we did a sketch that we had been filming. We only had 2.5 months to plan the show. I moved out January the 3rd, and we launched March 23rd. And when I turned up on January the 3rd, about 6 people worked for us, and by the time we went on air March 23rd, we had 100. So we had to employ people, build a set, get ideas. It was 2.5 months of intense panic. And we filmed this sketch where James essentially, it was like a Willy Wonka sketch where Les Moonves announces that he wants to find a new late night host, so he's put a golden ticket in some chocolate bars. And then we got and persuaded every person who America had thought was going to get the job to open a bar and there not be a ticket. So like Chris Rock's opening it and going, oh my God, they just will never give it to a black guy. And then you've got Joel McHale, who is a brilliantly successful. People are like, why isn't him? And then Chelsea Handler was the person that everyone thought was going to get the slot. And then she buys the chocolate bar, she drops it on the floor, and James walks past and says, Chelsea, so, excuse me, you've dropped it, and then opens the ticket, and then goes to school with Jay Leno, learns how to be a talk show host. You've got to learn how to fake laugh. You've got to learn how to pretend you're interested in terrible anecdotes. We were like we from the first moment were like we're going to take the piss out of ourselves because A, we're very British, and B, we're very aware of what all of you are thinking about this show. So let's be the people that say it first. Who's James Corden? Then we managed to persuade Tom Hanks to come on our first show with Mila Kunis, which was phenomenal. We showed backstage, because I used to love the Muppets and I used to love how they always used to see backstage. It used to excite me as a kid. So we do this thing with the dressing room check-in where James says, let's see who's on the show. And it gives people an eye into like Hollywood showbiz, and it was exciting. So we did that, again, exactly planned of how much of the backstage you'd see. Then Tom Hanks comes down, we chat to him, we get an exclusive, unbelievably, that Mila Kunis is actually married to Ashton Kutcher. She'd never admitted it. James just bombarded her into saying it. Then we did a sketch to show that that he can act alongside Tom Hanks. We recreated, as you saw in that clip, every movie he's ever done, which again, viral hit first day. And it was, I could never be more grateful to any man than Tom Hanks, because he changed all of our lives, because immediately it went, this is a serious show. And also it meant, people in America are like, oh, I don't sit on a couch with other people. I'm going to come down and sit on my own. It's like, well, Tom Hanks did it. I'm not going to do sketches until I've seen If You're a Hit. Well, Tom Hanks did it. And then suddenly our life became easier. And then we ended with a song where James sat at the piano and sang this really heartfelt song about, I hope you've enjoyed me tonight. I hope I haven't been too much of a pain. I'd love you to come back tomorrow. It would be great. And it was this beautiful song. And we delivered that hour. And then I stayed up until 6 a.m. in my office, locked the door, and watched the reviews come in and watched it go out on each coast. And then, went home, hugged my wife, said it's going to be all right. 15 minutes, had a shower, and then we came back and did show 2. And that was sort of how it panned out. But it was very important from day one that we were saying to America, take us seriously. Show 2, Carpool Karaoke. Show 3, David Beckham in pants. Show 4, we were like, let's do something bold. We tore up the rule book. We started on the street, and James turns to the camera and he goes, I'm still walking, I've done 3 shows in America, and I'm still walking around the streets and nobody recognises me. and it's beginning to be annoying. And so rather than wait for America to come to me, I'm going to go to them. And we knocked on people's houses. There's no cuts in it. You can see it's not edited. We knocked on people's houses. Can we do the show in your front, in your front room? And people would shut the door on us. The third person opened it. He was stoned out of his face, wasn't he, Tommy? And he let us in. We set it in the advert break, because of course we got an edit on it. We set up the cameras in his room. We had Jeff Goldblum and Beck and Jack Hanna, who's like an animal wrangler, all in a car outside, waiting to hear what address we were going to. And we did the show live from Tommy's house. And part 1, we brought Tommy out. We went, please welcome He's come all the way from his bedroom upstairs. It's Tommy. And Tommy was there going, what's going on in here, man? and then the doorbell goes, a bit like Grot Bags and Rod Hull. There's somebody at the door. And Jeff Goldblum walked in, sort of going, what is this show? I have no idea. And then, Jack Hanna walks in with an alligator, and then Beck performed first time since he won Album of the Year at the Grammys. I went to every label, begged them. I went to Capitol, met Steve Barnett. we've got this idea for a house show. To do a show for somebody's house. Please give us Beck. He hasn't been on TV since he won at the Grammys, and Steve Barnett backed the show. People like that I'll never forget. And Beck performed this beautiful song in the kitchen, in this really small kitchen, and it went from being a hilarious show to being like this really moving moment. And that night, Tommy's House was the #1 worldwide trend, and it was like, yeah, we can do this, we can do it, and we will do it, and so we battled from day one.
There's a sad afterthought, isn't there, which is Tommy's life peaked then. He's just like the rest. He's just like.
This is where. Well, you're absolutely right. But this is where Adam and his team are unbelievably brilliant. So, I'm usually quite involved in everything you do. We talk a lot. I'm across it and want to know what you do. And on the year anniversary of Tommy's House, on my Facebook page, an interview back at Tommy's house with Tommy came up. And Adam and his team had just gone to the house and hadn't told me, which pissed me off a bit, but it was fine. It was good. And it was this amazing bit with Tommy, and he looked smart, and he'd shaved, and he had a haircut, and he said he gets recognised on the street.
He's turned his life round.
Yeah. It was magnificent. So anyway, it was very exciting.
We've run over slightly because I'm just having a good time. Sorry, but we have got a bit of time for some questions from the floor. There is a couple of roving mics. Anyone? Yes, Elliot. And I will name everyone who asks a question. Doesn't matter if he's called Elliot.
You mentioned there that you've got 200 hours to play with in the US, whereas here, if James was given a chat show, it'd probably be 6 hours. Is that frustrating that the UK hasn't allowed him to develop a show as much as the US will do?
No, I think that the UK and the commissioners in here would have 100% backed James as a chat show host in the UK. I don't think we ever went around asking for a talk show for James Corden. I also feel like fundamentally late night is a huge part of American history. It's a huge thing that we've grown up watching Saturday night entertainment. Saturday night on American television is non-existent. It's the worst slot you could ever get. Whereas ironically, we all talk about all the great shows that you can watch here on a Saturday night. In America, late night is your entertainment, and therefore it's just part of the tradition and the heritage. The other thing I'd say is that you'll struggle to find the guests. I think that the way Graham and Jonathan and Alan Carr do it brilliantly, that they manage to find as many guests as that. But we've got a much bigger pool because people are in Los Angeles to promote whatever they've got. So I think we have an easier time of it. So no, there's no frustration on any UK commissioners. They would give us as much freedom, I'm sure, as CBS have.
Any other questions? Yes, Bob.
What are some of the...
I reckon wait for the mic.
Sure. Hello. What are some of the sort of last minute things that go wrong with a live show like that, and how do you deal with them?
Last minute things that aren't. It's not so much that it goes wrong because we've still got an edit. So it's not a live show. We've got a 3-hour edit, and that edit really helps. So if James pronounces a politician's name wrong or something like that, then so be it. Also, if things go wrong, then you sort of I think it's quite anarchic, our show. It's quite, as you saw from the taster tape, there's a lot of TFI in there. I grew up adoring TFI, and there's a lot of that in there, and actually you embrace the madness sometimes. So it's not so much that. I think what's more exciting is that you can change things at the last minute. So we were doing a show a few weeks ago, and then Beyonce brought out Lemonade that day. Her whole album was a visual album. And suddenly we looked at our monologue at midday, and it was about Trump or whatever, and it was like, wow, this is already dated because everyone's talking about Beyonce. So we built 3 sets as quickly as we possibly could. We're on a big American studio lot, so it means we can borrow stuff from The Price is Right or Dancing with the Stars, or it's a big old studio lot. We built 3 sets, dressed James up in 3 different Beyonce outfits, and we did the monologue in the style that Beyonce talks over her music, you know, like I'm feeling alive, and like and so what was amazing that 3 hours after that dropped, we had a monologue that night that was a Beyonce spoof. So I think that that's what is invigorating, that you can do that sort of stuff, and so there's more benefits to it being on the night than there is negatives.
Any more? Yes, gentleman at the back. Let's call him Andrew.
It's Ben, but good name. So a lot of your big viral hits have done really well in a big way because it's really famous people doing really funny things. If you couldn't attract the same caliber of guests, hypothetically, what would you do differently? Asking for a friend. To explain, I work on Blue Peter Digital. So for Adam, it's a...
No, it's a really fair question. It's a really fair question, because again, I'm very aware that like, it's all very well that I can sit here and go, hey, we got 15 million hits of Drop the Mic, which is Ross from Friends. It's like a big deal, I get it. I don't know if I have the answer to that, in truth. I think that not all of our hits are with megastars. I'd say that a lot of them are based around James, who himself is becoming a megastar, I guess, in America. And I think, yeah, it's a very difficult thing to answer. Do you have a better answer?
On my side, we would do nothing different. You know, I think the way that we distribute content online and on YouTube, they give us a very specific set of tools and a roadmap on how to do this and best practices, and that's always evolving. So we follow that trend, but you know, I don't believe by any means that without these we have the views and the numbers that we have, but the philosophy that we take on our side would remain the same, and it's all about making what we do on YouTube feel like what's happening on the show, and we can do that whether David Schwimmer's in a bit or not. Granted, the numbers will be massively different, I'm
I
sure.
also think that it affected the way we think. Like Mariah Carey, as an example, is someone who fundamentally, she wouldn't come into our studio because she was not available. I'm not giving her any stick. We were like, you got half an hour with her, and she's at her house, and think of what you do. And there's a lot of times in TV here, whether it be red carpets at film premieres, where Graham Norton used, I think it was Betty so brilliantly. And I think that there is ways of going, well, what window do we have? And rather than just going, well, oh, they can't come to us, that's a shame. Like, you've got to sort of go, well, what can we do with the people that we have, I guess. It's not a great answer, but it's the best I got.
That's good, thank you.
Maybe one more question. Yes, lady in the front here. Can we get a mic?
Thank you. Because James is such a triple threat, film, theater, and television, if he ever gets antsy wanting to do theater again, would you ever move the show for a limited run Broadway thing that he could do and tape the show in New York?
Well, it's interesting. We thought about doing it. We were very honoured. We got asked to do the Tonys, so I produced the Tonys this year, and James hosted it. And we were talking a lot about, oh, well, should we move the show to New York for a week? We didn't, because we just thought we've got to get the Tonys right, because they've given us a primetime slot, so let's just focus on that. We considered doing the show from New York, but we were also very aware that we would be up against Fallon and Seth and The Daily Show, and in LA we only have Kimmel really, and Conan is our competition. So no, I think he might get the Broadway buzz one day again. I'm sure he will. The guy can do anything he wants. When we were discussing this job, I remember thinking at first it was a mad idea for him to do it. I remember when he said he was going to do it, I was like, you're in movies, you're on TV shows, you've got you're a Broadway star, why do you want to be a chat show host? And actually, he said, because I think it could be the most creative thing I ever do, filling an hour of content every night and using all my skills, singing, dancing, acting, interviewing, chatting. I feel like it will be a really good thing for me, and it has been. So I don't think he's going to do it forever. I don't imagine he's going to be a Letterman who does it for 30 years or whatever, but I think that we'll be doing it for the next few years. I know how long our deal is, and it's a fair old whack, but that's great. I don't mean fair old whack money-wise, I mean fair old whack as in time-wise, just to clarify.
I think you mean both, actually.
No, I don't. So we'll be doing this a while. But even when he finishes doing it, he'll still, he'll be in a better position than he was before, because he'll be now an American star rather than a British one as well.
Right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, that is all we've got time for. Please join me in thanking Ben Winston and Adam Abramson. and also our sponsors YouTube. Enjoy what's left of the festival. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
That was great. Really good fun.
Thank you. It was awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Dad. That was great.